it's never a question of what's happening to you. It's always a question of how are you responding to what's happening to you. And there's a beautiful line in the Vedas. The Vedas are this beautiful ancient body of knowledge that stems from northern India, but it's really universal knowledge. But this line in the Vedas said there's no such thing as a stressful situation. There are only stressful responses to given situations. And I like this idea because it means that I'm not special, you're not special. It means that resilience is a skill, resilience is a tool, and anyone can learn it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Thrive TV. I'm Eric Edmeades. I'm your host. And today we're with Emily Fletcher. And I'm so very happy about that because what we need right now, frankly, is practical things that we can do to feel better about what's going on, to calm ourselves, and ultimately support our health and our immune systems. And so I'm really glad that we've got Emily with us today. Emily is the founder of Ziva Meditation. And she's also a massive best-selling author and done incredible appearances all over the place, like the Today Show, Vogue, ABC News. She's been named one of the top 100 women in wellness to watch, and she's trained over 20,000 people around the world. But you know, all of those normal accolades are all fun and interesting. But what I can tell you is she's amazing. And I'll tell you the way I first met Emily, and it worked like this. I had agreed to do a speaking gig in Vancouver, Canada, and somehow I'd agreed to do a speaking gig that same weekend in Mykonos in Greece. And so I had to speak in Vancouver and then leave the stage and jump immediately into a car and go straight to the airport, catch 3 flights and get to Mykonos, where I was like having to go straight onto the stage. And I got to this event. It was a Mind Valley event. And I got there, and because I was halfway through the event, there was not a lot of organization. And I was, you know, I'm a pretty calm person, but I was kind of getting, okay, I need to get to the stage. And all of a sudden I walked up this hill and there was this circle of attentive people in calm and in peace. And in the middle of that circle was Emily, guiding them through a really gorgeous and powerful meditation. And it was so grounding, and it was such a great first impression. Since then, Emily and I have been at events all around the world, and we've had the great chance of partying and meditating and having a good time. Emily, I'm so glad to have you on the show. Thank you for making the time.
Oh, thank you for having me. And just thinking back to that, it was this beautiful chapel on top of a hill on Mykonos. I mean, just everything you think about with Greece, with the white roofs and the blue ocean and the, you know, the like just beautiful steeples on top of the church. And now, you know, you said we might do a meditation together, and I'm thinking back to what I led that day in Greece, and I'd love to walk everyone through it at the end because it was really special, and it just helped to. Right now, when we're in times of duress and stress, it's really easy to get myopic and be like, it's my world and everything is life or death and everything is make or break in my myopic sphere. And what we did that day is that we just pulled the lens of our awareness out, all the way into the cosmos. And it doesn't negate your feelings. It doesn't negate your challenges, but it does help to put them in perspective.
It really, really does. It really does. You know, it's our state of mind. You know, there are some filters, I think, that we see the world through. And one of them is our beliefs. You know, what we believe affects the way we see the world. But the other one is our state of mind. And so you're right. Your state of mind might not change objective reality. It might not change what's actually going on, but it really does change the way you see it. And I think that calm is really important. Before we get into meditation, here's one of the things I'm fascinated by is, you know, your home, you have a new-ish child in your home, and you're on lockdown. How are you handling things?
Well, look, I mean, first I want to say I acknowledge my extreme privilege because my life has not changed very much at all. I am privileged in so many ways. One of them is that I already had an online business. 2, I already worked from home 90% of the time. 3, my nanny lives alone and is able to drive in. So she's able to basically be in quarantine with us, but still come to work. And so this is largely not impacted my life that greatly. For me, it's a minor inconvenience. For many people, they don't know where they're going to eat dinner. They don't know how they're going to pay rent. They're having to leave their family members. And so I know that everyone's situation is not the same, but for me right now, I feel like I am just swimming in gratitude. I am so grateful for this time with my son. I am so grateful for the fact that it is springtime in New York City. I'm grateful that they haven't closed the parks yet, even though people are being a little bit ding-dongy and not respecting the physical distancing, and they might close the parks, but right now the parks are still open. And so right now I feel like my job is, one, gratitude, and two, to give as much as I possibly can, because I am in this place of being so blessed that I feel like I have a responsibility to get these tools into the hands of as many people as possible.
Wow, you and I are so on the same page. You know, I also, there's not a morning I don't wake up and recognize the incredible privilege that I live in. I mean, I do have the one hardship of being separated from my family, and, you know, they're in the US and I'm here on my own. But as hardships go, you know, I'm really grateful also that so much of our business is driven online, and you know, that our tribe is out there supporting us in it, and that I'm in a position where I also now have the time and resources to be able to give back like that. So I'm glad you and I have always had that kind of thing in common, but it's nice to hear you put it so well. Let's talk a little bit about, I had a fascinating conversation with my mother this morning, and she was talking about the community that she's living in and how there's a lot of, you know, panic and underlying stress. And she seemed to notice that the younger people were, the more freaked out they were. And she kind of wondered if it wasn't that maybe as you get older, potentially some wisdom kicks in and kind of supports you and so on. But, you know, I wonder also if there's not another component to it, and it relates a lot to your journey. And that is that I often feel that the hardships that we faced earlier on in our lives set the tone for how stoic we might be about hardships that come in the future. Mm-hmm. And in other words, I have faced in my life, I mean, you know, various business stresses and personal stresses, but also, you know, literal death, like where I've had rhinos like about to kill me. I was in a casino when guys walked in with automatic assault rifles and started shooting. And so, you know, as a result of those events, they kind of calibrated me. And so now when something happens to me, compared to that, it's trivial. And I'm like, well, let's just handle it. Whereas somebody who didn't have that stuff, it's harder for them. And I wonder, I mean, you know, your time in Broadway, your time acting, like there are a lot of people who are broken by that, who can't handle the stress of that. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you handled that stuff and maybe how it served you since.
Well, as you're sharing that, the thing that's coming up for me is resilience. And because, you know, some people being almost killed by rhinos or gunpoint, that could break people as well. And so it's never a question of what's happening to you. It's always a question of how are you responding to what's happening to you. And there's a beautiful line in the Vedas. The Vedas are this beautiful ancient body of knowledge that stems from northern India, but it's really universal knowledge. But this line in the Vedas said there's no such thing as a stressful situation. There are only stressful responses to given situations. And I like this idea because it means that I'm not special, you're not special. It means that resilience is a skill, resilience is a tool, and anyone can learn it. And the more resilient you are, the better able you are going to be able to dance with whatever life is throwing you. And I will say from firsthand experience that I used to not be, well, that's not totally true. I was resilient in some ways. I've always been resilient in some ways. But I will say that the stress, the demand, the external demands was getting the best of me when I was on Broadway. And that was the thing that brought me to meditation. And once I learned meditation, it increased my resilience tenfold. So the Cliff's Notes story was that I was on Broadway for 10 years. My last show was a chorus line. So my job was to understudy 3 of the leads, which means you show up to the theater never knowing which character you're going to play. So you're basically always in fight or flight. And even though you're like, oh, poor little Broadway star, it's like, well, actually for most people, the fear of public speaking is greater than the fear of death, because the fear of public speaking is a real threat, whereas death up until a global pandemic seems hypothetical at best. And so back in the day, I'm sure your folks know this.
Also, Emily, I'm sorry, I got to say it, but when death happens, it's done. Public speaking, you got to live with that afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. The shame of that afterwards, which I'm sure we've both felt. And it harkens back to, if we performed in the tribe or said something bad in the tribe, they would kick us out and we would be killed by rhinos. Yeah. Like public speaking, if you did a bad job, it did mean death back in the day. And so I think there's a piece of our biology that still remembers that. So anyway, long story short, I was living my life in this constant state of fight or flight, which led to anxiety, which led to insomnia. I wasn't sleeping through the night for 18 months. I started going gray in my 20s. I was getting sick and injured, and it was confusing as to why I was living my dream and miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found this meditation, and it cured my insomnia on the first day of my first class. I stopped going gray. I'm 41. I turned 41 on Friday. I have like one gray hair. I was legitimately going gray in my 20s. I didn't get sick for 8.5 years after learning to meditate. I used to get sick 4 to 5 times a year. And it basically changed my whole relationship with performing. And so I just thought, why does everyone not do this? I went to India. I started a 3-year training process to teach. And since graduating, like you said, I've taught 20,000 folks to meditate. And what I love about it is that I see people transition from not being able to handle the demands of their life into being very resilient and able to handle the demands of their life. Does it change what's coming at them? Largely no. But what the meditation does change is that it changes your neurochemistry. Yeah. And if you change the projector, the projection cannot help but be changed.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I have a funny background or a funny history with meditation, and that was that when I was about 12 years old, I was watching the $6 Million Man. And there was an episode of the $6 Million Man. There's a few of us that are old enough to know what I'm talking about here, but they're
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, okay. you're not. But anyway, I was watching this show, and they had an episode where there was a guy who could hold his breath for like 20 minutes in this big pool of water. And the way they did it was they would cut away to his imagination, and he was meditating, and he would visualize this lake. And as he visualized the lake, as long as he could keep the water flat, then he could hold his breath indefinitely. But if the water rippled, then he would be disturbed, and then he'd have to come up for air. And I just found that whole thing really fascinating. And so at 12, whenever I was in stress, and stress for me was everything from, an alcoholic dad throwing shit around the house to having to wait in a doctor's office. I mean, those are all various forms of stress, right? And I would start to go to this lake. And I went to this lake, and I did it differently than he did. I would paddle across the lake. And I would paddle using war strokes. So the paddle never leaves the water. You hold it flat against the water, then you feather it thin through the water. It's a way of paddling that makes no noise. And I would paddle like that through the lake. And as long as I could keep the water flat, then I would stay in this really calm meditative state. And I've been doing that since I was 12. Here's where it gets creepy. 10 years later, I buy a Jeep. And I drive deep up into the mountains in Vancouver. I'm trying to find this lake. And I find this lake. And oddly, the lake's uphill from me, which it was in my meditations, because lakes usually aren't uphill from you, But anyway, I walk uphill to this lake, and Emily, I got to the lake, and it was identical. And there was a canoe sitting there. This is 3 hours drive from any human being. And there was a canoe sitting there. And the next thing you know, I just take the canoe out, and I am canoeing on the literal lake, on the actual lake that I've been meditating on for all these years. And I got it to this day, when I need calm, I just go to that lake. And what's really crazy is I don't usually share that story when I'm talking to corporates about meditation. In fact, I don't even call it meditation. I call it, daydreaming, because they get all weird about the term. But you are absolutely right. The effect on the neurology is clear. When you meditate, you're communicating to your cells that you're in a safe environment, and somehow the world looks better. And I really love your take on it and the way that you approach it. And what I really love is that there are so many people who are like just star meditators. Like I've been meditating all these years, I don't teach it at all. I do it in my workshops, but now I recognize, like, man, it's a life skill that everybody's got to have. What inspired you to want to make it more than just your practice? What inspired you to want to take it to people?
Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging it as a skill. And second of all, I want to say that it is a rare, beautiful thing that you were able to cognize a tool that worked for you. It's not impossible. I see it from time to time, people that as children just create or cognize some sort of a method that does change their biology, that does change their brain chemistry. And so that's a real gift. And I think it's served you, obviously very well. But most people don't have that gift. A lot of people are like, yeah, people tell me to meditate. I know I should meditate, but what does that mean? And should I be focusing on my breath or picturing a lake or, chanting Om or fancy fingers or stopping my mind? Like, what does that that mean? And so it is a skill, and we'll get into like the details of it more in a moment. But what inspired me to become a teacher was, I've always been the type of person, if I find something that works for me, I have to shout it from the rooftops. I'm like, do this, it's so good, everybody try it. And I've always been a little evangelical, much to my family and friends' chagrin. They're like, shut up, Emily. But the meditation thing was too good. It was too revolutionary. And at this point, it was actually Saturday. This Saturday will be my 12-year anniversary from the day that I got initiated for my very first class. And so you think about it, 12 years doesn't sound like that long ago, but 12 years ago, there were no online classes. Meditation was not a thing. There was not one meditation app. I mean, it was a thing. It just was not in the zeitgeist yet. There was nowhere near as many scientific studies on this. Neuroscientists weren't that interested in meditation. People were really writing it off as hippy dippy nonsense. And now actually our friend Dave Asprey tweeted, he was like, you know, people under 40 won't even know or remember that meditation used to be weird. Do you know what I mean? Like you just said, I won't say it in front of my corporate folks because they brush it off. But now, like all the 20-year-olds, they think it's weird if you don't meditate. And the trick now
by the way, and some of them think their generation invented it. I've had that conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure. The millennials that are like, oh, this is my thing, which I vote like, let's build on top of the shoulders of giants. You know what I mean? Let's acknowledge the lineages. Let's acknowledge the great teachers. And yes, we might have to adapt it or to, you know, shift things to speak to the current demands, but let's not pretend that we invented this stuff. Because then it's just, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're working harder than you would need to. So anyway, but I think there's one story, and it reminded me when you were telling your lake story. So my first trip to India, I went just for my own personal practice. I was like, this thing is so great. I love it so much. It's enhanced my life and my performance so dramatically. I want to eventually be able to share it with others, but I didn't know when or how. So I was like, I just want to know as much as I can. So I went to India. I went on this retreat in Rishikesh, which is a little beautiful town in the foothills of the Himalayas. And I was studying the Upanishads. And the Upanishads are a collection of sacred poems, actually. And the only definition, the only thing that makes something an Upanishad is that the theme of the poem is that there's only one thing and we're all it. There's only one thing and we are all it. And that one thing is energy or consciousness, whatever you want to say. And so I was doing this just personal meditation retreat, just learning for my own edification. But every morning we would go and we would meditate on the banks of the Ganges River. And so we would wake up before dawn and we would go to meditate. Now cut to about a year prior, I had just left Chorus Line Broadway and I was on the Chorus Line tour. And I just learned to meditate in between Broadway and the tour. And I knew that there was a bunch of meditation teachers in LA. My second stop on the tour was LA. So I'm doing some Googling. I'm like finding meditation teachers. I just want to go to a group meditation. I'm just trying to learn anything I can. I find this guy in Venice. He's like, sure, Wednesday night, come on over. I show up, it's just him and his girlfriend. And I'm like, well, this is not the group meditation experience I was really interested in. But I realized they're not like weird serial killers. So I was like, okay. So I'm meditating with my purse on my lap, one eye open. And finally I was like, all right, Emily, just surrender. So I close my eyes, I meditate. I open my eyes afterwards. And the first thing I see is this beautiful photograph maybe, or a painting maybe. I'm not really sure, but it's a bridge. And at the end of this bridge, there's this light. And it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I can't stop looking at it. And I said, what is that? And he said, oh, that's Rishikesh. And I was like, what's a Rishikesh? And he said, that's this town in India. We do this retreat there every couple of years. Are you coming? And I was like, no. And I look back at the photo and I look back at him and I said, yeah, I'm going to go. And so cut to 6 months later, it's my 30th birthday. I'm in India. We're going to meditate on the banks of the Ganges. And I see this exact same snapshot, this exact bridge, and the sun is rising on the other side. And every time I tell this story, I get goosebumps because I knew that the me in that moment, I stopped in my tracks. I started sobbing, crying. And I knew that the me in that moment went back to the me in Los Angeles and said, you have to come here. You have to teach this. And so I just thought, well, I'll teach it later when I'm not dancing, when I'm not acting, when I'm not singing, like when I'm old and 50. That's what I was thinking.
Hey.
I know. 30-year-old actresses, we're real narcissists. And so I just thought, well, later, I'll do it later. And then, once that thing happened, it just, nature took over and it was just, I was rendered choiceless. It became very clear where nature wanted to use me to deliver my gifts. And now I feel like what's so special about Ziva is that I've taken this lifetime of performance training, been able to translate that into the meditation, that I very much frame meditation as a performance tool. It's like, look, you don't have to wear beads. You don't have to go to India. You don't have to change your identity. This is just a tool to help you perform better at whatever you love performing at. And that could be motherhood, entrepreneurship, writing. It doesn't matter what you're up to. The less stress you have in your body, the better able you are going to be able to perform.
Wow, there's so much in that, and you tell it incredibly well, which is inspiring. Like, when people talk about trying to find their passion, one of the things I really get from your story is that sometimes what we really need to do is just follow our bliss, and then our passion will find us. Yeah. And that's exactly the same thing that happened to me with WildFit. Is the passion found me, and and all of a sudden, of all the businesses that I've started and bought and been involved with, WildFit has been the easiest, the most straightforward, growing by itself organically. I've had to put just about no real effort into that myself. And guess what? It's when your passion hits you like that, I don't know, the universe, God, whatever, just seems to be on side a lot. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful feeling and incredibly gratifying, right? I mean, one of the things that I've really noticed when I have introduced people, and I do it accidentally. I do it because I do guided meditations in my workshops. And then people go, oh my God, I didn't know meditating could be so powerful and whatever. And I know that even at that small anecdotal level that I have, people come to me and go, you know what, my insomnia is gone. My headaches are gone. I'm calm. I'm not yelling at my children. I'm not yelling at my wife, my husband. Like it really has a tangible impact on people. And that makes that even more rewarding. Mm-hmm. Let me, let's go to some sort of practical things. Like one of the things that I really like about, so I don't know if you're familiar with Peggy Cappy. She's a good friend of mine, and she's the yoga queen of PBS. So she wrote the book Yoga, I think Yoga for Everyone. And then she did a PBS special called Yoga for the Rest of Us. Nice. And often I think of her when I think of you, and why. The reason being is you're not similar really in any way except in energy. And what I mean is that she took yoga and said, well, it doesn't have to be what you think it is. And that's, I think, one of the things that you do such a great job of. It doesn't, you don't need incense over there, and your knees don't have to be bent like that. And you don't have to have your fingers in this, like meditation isn't structured. It doesn't have to be structured in that way. I like that you make it accessible in the way that Peggy makes yoga accessible for people. Where did you get, was that from a teacher? Is that something you relaxed into? How did that happen?
Well, I've always been a little allergic to what I would call mood makers. So there's a lot of people making a mood about meditation, but not actually effing meditating. And I can tell because they're like still stressed and their life is still chaotic and dramatic, but they're like real precious. And I'm a little allergic to that. And so I've never been about preciousness. I've never been about dogma or doctrine. And, we're living in a day and age right now where it's a bad time to be a guru, like they're just falling like flies. It's like there's every week another Netflix documentary about another guru who's not acting in integrity. And unfortunately, a lot of these tools and techniques and even lineages have been passed down, like, guru to disciple. They've been very patriarchal, very dogmatic, very doctrine, and then very little questioning of, well, what is this? Why is this? What's relevant now? And I know that this is a fine line between what we were kind of making fun of earlier of, younger generations being like, well, I invented this and it's mine. So it takes a level of mastery to know, well, what is the purity of the lineage? What is the purity of the tradition? What is actually coming from nature? Where is the magic sauce? And what needs to be adapted and iterated on? And if I have anything to give credit to the Ziva's success, I think that it has been my ability to dance that line of what is the purity of the lineage? What is the non-changeable, like sacred part of this that actually is shifting people's consciousness? And how does that need to be adapted to be relevant to the needs of the time of today? And so I feel like I've been able to kind of dance that line of science and spirit, of performance and practicality. And really it's just been what actually works, what's actually benefiting people, and what is just ceremony.
Yeah, I think so. I have a thought I'd love to share with you. I'm curious your point of view, but bearing in mind that I was meditating and not really knowing that it was called meditation, I think it was later on when I started listening to the Beatles and stuff, and then they started talking about TM, and then I was like, oh, there's a name for this. I thought it was just daydreaming, but but now, over the last 10 years, I've been going to visit with the Hadza Bushmen in East Africa on a regular basis, and one of the little kind of theories I've come up with is that we now meditate as in the same way that yoga is actually making us return to natural body movements, right? Like body movements that we would have had to do in nature if we didn't have grocery stores and computers to work at. Like, we'd have to bend our bodies in those ways, and we'd have to move, and we'd have to maintain a degree of flexibility.
And stillness, and we're hunting.
Yeah, exactly. I feel that meditation is basically, in a sense, almost yoga of the mind, in the sense that our ancestors, in all likelihood, meditated on a regular basis, not as a job, in the same way that the Bushmen do not exercise, but they exercise all the time. Because when I've been there, just a month and a half ago, I was there, and we were there for 2 weeks. And you're sitting by the fire with these guys, and there are these long moments where there's this billions of stars above you, and it's just the most incredible night sky, and the light from the fire flickering across your eyes. And you go into this unbelievably deep meditative state. And they've been doing that and we've had fire for 2 million years. So arguably humans have been doing that for years and years and years, long before some guru had to turn it into a process, because our lives had become so distracting that we were no longer doing that which we needed to do. Does this make sense?
Yes, 1,000%. And you're right. Every culture, every civilization, every indigenous people has had some way of changing their neurochemistry. And for some people, it's they're holding their breath. This idea of this person you're watching, there was like stories that the Mayans and the Incans can walk on the floor of an ocean for 5 to 7 minutes. And they can only do that by manipulating their breathing, by manipulating their metabolic rate. And that's what we're doing at Ziva. We're just decreasing the metabolic rate, which is the rate with which the body consumes oxygen. But if you look at the indigenous folks of Australia, of even like Hawaiian shamanism, of Native American traditions, when you go back to the indigenous, cultures, you see practices like these in almost every continent. The reason why we hearken back to India and why we associate so many of the meditation and yoga things with India is simply because of geography. So India is very landlocked in that there's 2 mountain ranges on the top and 2 oceans on the bottom. So for 6,000 years of modern history, when other countries were being invaded, when indigenous populations were being decimated, India was protected. And so a lot of the knowledge that we know as ancient and pure was not able to be killed. Also, India was very smart in that they took a lot of these tools and techniques and they put them into the hands of the monks, into the monasteries, because these weren't fighting. They weren't the warrior classes. India, because of the class system, the monks and the Brahmins, which are the priest class, they were not fighting. So because these techniques and tools weren't in books, they were in people's mind, they were in people's consciousness, they had to protect the brains of the people who had the knowledge. And this is also why, for better or for worse, we associate a lot of these tools with monastic or holy people. So when India finally did start getting invaded, once we had ships and once we had the technology to traverse the mountains, a lot of people were like, oh, here are these people living what feels like superpowers, what feels like they have magical special powers, and they're monks. It must be their monastic lifestyle that's making them holy, or that's giving them the superpowers. And we see a bit of a bastardization or even a perverted state of that happening in a lot of the churches, where they're like, oh, well, if I stop having sex, if I pretend to be monastic, if I pretend to be holy, then I will get these superpowers. And it's like, no, if you're not a monk and you pretend to be a monk, it doesn't make you more holy. It only takes your sexual nature and sublimates it, and then it comes out in unhealthy ways. And so the thing that I really want to highlight here is that in India, it's either you're a monk or you're a householder, and it's less than 1% of the population that is monastic by nature. That is their preference. They don't want to be having sex with people. They don't want to be living in society. And for the rest of us, the other 99% of us, we're what we would call householders, meaning you want to have a family, you want to have a job, you want to be in society. And the monastic meditation techniques are different than the householder meditation techniques. And the way that this is relevant to our modern day conversation is that so many of the apps and so many of the quote unquote meditations styles that are so popular, the free stuff on YouTube, the guided studios, are actually teaching derivations of monastic practices. And I'm only bringing this up because so many people who are householders like us, people with busy minds and busy lives, if we start to do monastic practices, we're going to think they're hard. We're going to think we have to focus, that it's discipline, that we're failing if we're clearing our mind. And then this is why the whole world is like, well, I can't meditate because my brain is too busy. It's like, because people like us are trying to do monastic practices. And what I teach,
it's like we're trying to go to black belt level, you know, in a different discipline. And
well, I would actually argue that it's not black belt level. It's not about a level of difficulty. It's a level of, it's not made for you. It's not your practice. And so if I tried to, I'm trying to think of another analogy, but it's like putting on a coat that just doesn't fit. It's not your coat. And so, whereas if you do a style that was made for householders, it has nothing to do with difficulty level. It has to do with, oh, this coat fits me. This style of meditation was made for me. It's designed to be done into a busy mind and a busy life because, and this is where I think we go to the difficulty conversation. A lot of people like us think, well, whatever monks are doing is so much more advanced. They must be vibrating or levitating, but it's actually the other way around. Because monks are meditating all day, that is their contribution to society, they can afford to do gentler practices. But if you have a job and kids and stuff to do, you have less time in your day with which to meditate. So you need a technique that's going to change your neurochemistry very quickly.
That makes real sense. Years ago, I was having this very, very rough day in business. Like, I mean, the roughest day. I had 20 employees, and my accountant came in on Tuesday and said, we don't have the cash for We don't have the cash for payroll on Friday.
So basically, where the entire planet Earth is right now.
Yeah, it was a really like, but yeah, you know, but one of the differences was that I was doing it alone.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, there was no chance of my government bailing me out or any of that kind of stuff. I was really on my own. And I woke up in my bedroom the next morning, and I honestly, what I wanted was a nervous breakdown. My previous employer had apparently had a couple of those, and you know what happens when you have a nervous breakdown? People are sympathetic. They're like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, he went bankrupt, but he had a nervous breakdown. You know, it was like, I was kind of like, if I could just have a nervous breakdown, then everybody'd be sympathetic. But I was like, I don't even know how do you do that? Like, I'm sitting here going, okay, I want to have a nervous breakdown. What do I do? Like, there's no, and you know, maybe now, because there was no real Google back then, but maybe I could have, like today you go, how could I have a nervous breakdown? But there were no instructions, and there was no e-course. And so what's interesting is, instead, I decided to pick up a book, and I picked up a book, an audio book actually. And no, it was a written book. I just made the voices in my head. Now I think about it. And it was Wayne Dyer telling a story about Deepak Chopra. And it kind of goes like this. He's like, he's going, he says, I called Deepak the other day because I was really struggling with something, and it was really difficult. I called him up and I go, Deepak, I really need your ideas or your thoughts. And Deepak goes, meditate. And he's like, no, look, it's Wayne Dyer. I know about meditating. Okay. Like, I just need to talk to you about this right now, because meditate and call me back. So I was like, I was listening to this, and I'm going, you know, I just decided, all right, you know what? I'm going to sit here in the bath and I'm just going to meditate. I'm going to listen to Deepak and I'm going to meditate. And I did. And you know, what's really weird is I went to work that day, and I felt good. I was going to go out of business in 3 days, but I felt good. And I walked in, and nobody knew that the trouble was going on except my accountant. And when I walked in, the accountant walks into my office and she goes, are you okay?
Are you taking drugs?
Yeah. Are you having a nervous breakdown? I wish, but no. And you know what's really crazy, Emily? And look, we can all get into the conversation about whether when we meditate and we tap into the quantum field and do we affect objective reality of the external world and all that kind of stuff, whatever. What I know is that Wednesday, one of our largest clients prepaid an annual contract that they were only supposed to pay quarterly, and just did it because they wanted to. And we, like, it just happened. And I just, like, I'm not claiming that the meditation made it happen. What I'm saying is that meditation allowed me not to suffer until it happened. And it really, it had a big impact. But the lesson that I got from this, and I've heard you speak to this before. I posted this actually on Facebook the other day. If one more person tells me to meditate, I'm going to meditate. Because when I don't want to meditate, I really need to. And so I do. And when I do want to meditate, then I do as well. That's the tough part. Now, here's my question for you about this. It's like, When we want to, much like you said with the monastic practice, when we want to, it's easy. You don't need any skill. You don't need self-discipline. It just happens. You do it. But when you need it and you don't want it, what are your words of advice about that? How can we get somebody who really needs it in that moment and doesn't want to do it, but just get them there?
Okay. So first of all, I love this story very much. Second of all, thank you, Deepak. And I actually do want to talk about like what may have shifted, like you meditating and then that person paying their annual thing. Because when you're meditating, you're changing your reticular activating system, and there is a whole lot of brain science around that. But if people don't want to meditate, how do we get them to meditate? So this is an interesting phenomenon, because right now the world is arguably more stressed than it's ever been in my lifetime. Anyway, we have two pandemics happening right now. We have the viral one, but we also have the stress pandemic happening. One we're looking for a cure for, the other one we have a cure for, and it's called meditation. And we've just made our online course free to doctors, nurses, and EMTs, basically anyone on the front line. And it's an interesting experiment. And to be honest, it is an experiment, because learning to meditate, learning a skill when you're already under extreme duress, extreme fight or flight, extreme intensity, is a very specific thing. It's a very specific thing. How do you learn something new, especially a de-excitation technique, when you're already in fight or flight? And I'm actually going to interview one of my Navy SEAL students later this week, because he learned Ziva when he was like in a porta potty in Afghanistan, like in a combat zone. And he's like listening to my audios in a porta potty. I was like, dude, you are more disciplined than I am. I can't say I would have meditated in a porta potty. Good on you. So, I mean, obviously the best answer is to learn these skills when you're not already in fight or flight, when shit is hitting the fan. However, if shit is hitting the fan, you have one of two options: have the nervous breakdown or become more resilient. And while it's probably not going to be easy or even comfortable to become more resilient, I would argue that it's much better than having a nervous breakdown or stewing in suffering or stewing in speculation, which leads always and only to suffering anyway. And that's the tricky thing about this pandemic that we're in, is that it's all speculation. None of us know. We don't know anything. We think we know. We're holding on to anything that we can, but the reality is we don't know. And it's uncomfortable for us as humans to sit in the unknown. And so, we see this in relationships all the time. I don't know if it's going to work or not work, so I'm just breaking up with you. We'd rather be in a known that's painful than to be in the discomfort of the unknown. And this is where I think meditation can really help us right now. And to your point, like, how do we do it? How do we make ourselves do it when we don't want to? Well, one, I think it's a skill. So learn the skill. And two, make it non-negotiable. Like, I meditate every day, twice a day, non-negotiably. I don't do it when I need it. I don't do it when I want to. I don't do it when I don't want to. I just do it every day, twice a day, like brushing my teeth. And some days it's amazing and transcendent and glorious. And some days it's boring and annoying and I hate it. But I do it anyway. Sometimes you enjoy exercising. Sometimes you don't. Do it anyway. Sometimes you enjoy showering. Sometimes you don't. Shower anyway. It's not like, in a couple of weeks when I'm not so busy, I'm going to get back around to that showering thing. It's like, no, every day you're dirty. Every day you need to wash yourself. Same thing with your brain. Every day you're going to pick up demands and stress. Every day we have to clean our brain. And it's one of my missions at Ziva to make leaving your house without meditating as rude as it would be to leave your house without brushing your teeth. It's like, that's gross. You need to handle that.
Yeah, that I really like that. I think one of the things that I would offer with that is that very often the first 5% of something is the only uncomfortable part, really. I remember when I first got into long distance running, I hated the first mile. I mean, I hated it. And it's interesting because I think that many times in life, minimum effective dose is a really interesting way to coach people. Like, anybody who wants to write a book, don't set a goal of writing 1,000 words a day. Set a goal of writing 250 words a day. It's a couple paragraphs. It's really easy. But I feel, at least for me, I can't do minimum effective dosing with some stuff like running, working out, or meditating, because I find the first minute really unpleasant. And so if I were to, or the first mile, like in running, if I were to just go minimum effective and just run 1 mile, then 100% of my experience would be unpleasant. And I find that with meditation, if I try and I can do it if I'm at an airport or what have you, and I can do a quick little 5-minute meditation, and that's great. But if I'm at home and I've got lots of stuff going on and I have to choose to meditate rather than work or rather than be with family or rather than eat or whatever, now it's that first few minutes I find resistance about.
Mm-hmm.
There's this moment after you've been running for the first mile where in the second mile, the stride hits, and the third mile, it gets better, and the fourth mile. And I feel, to me, that how I get through that is I know that the first 2 or 3 minutes of quieting down and, settling in might be uncomfortable. It might be unpleasant, but I know damn well that the 5th minute through the 10th or 20th or 30th is going to be blissful. And that's, I just have to remind myself, I have to actually talk to myself. Okay, Eric, the first 5 minutes might suck, but the second 5 minutes will be great.
Yeah. That's so good. And so people are definitely looking for the minimum effective dose of meditation.
Yeah.
You hear, well, just do 1 minute, just do one mindful breath. And what people are saying there is like, practice mindfulness, be mindful, take one mindful breath, be conscious, be in your body, which is awesome. We can't be too present or too mindful. To me, mindfulness and presence is a benefit or a byproduct of your meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
And meditation is different. It's where you're changing your state of consciousness. You're going into a verifiable 4th state of consciousness, and then you become more present or mindful as a result of that. And you're right, for the first few minutes, for most of us, there is a lot of resistance. I would much rather be hanging out with my adorable 1-year-old son than meditating. I would much rather be answering a million more emails and, absolving my workaholism, that's my preference in that moment. It's never my preference to meditate. I'm always too busy to meditate. I never enjoy the first few minutes. And I think when people understand that that's universal, and that the benefit of meditation comes not from the sitting itself, but from what happens in your life afterwards. This is why what probably will be on my tombstone is that we meditate to get good at life, not to get good at meditation. And y'all really, truly, if you remember one thing from this, let it be this: we meditate to get good at life, not to get good at meditation. Because if we're looking to get good at meditation, then in that first minute, when you're having all those thoughts and thinking you shouldn't be thinking and it's uncomfortable, you're like, this sucks. I don't enjoy this. I want to be a good meditator. I'm out. But if you just do it, even if you hate it, even if you hate the entire meditation, but then you are more kind and patient with your family, you are more innovative at work, you are more creative with your book that you're writing, then it's like the juice is very much worth the squeeze. I find that the return on investment is exponential. The energy I invest, the time I invest, I get it back tenfold at least.
Yeah, I agree with you. Emily, let's dive in. Can you share a meditation with us? We got a bunch of people on here with us live, and of course, many more people get to watch this in recording. Yeah. So are you up for that?
Yeah, I would love that. So a couple of things before we dive in, just things we want to keep in mind. One, I want people to know that thoughts are not the enemy of meditation. Okay, there's like this one dude out there telling everyone that in order to meditate, you have to clear your mind. Not here, not at Ziva, not according to Emily. Thoughts are not the enemy of meditation. Effort is. So the thing that I would invite you to enjoy during this is effortlessness, ease, surrender. Let's give ourselves the gift of going into this with beginner's mind and just seeing what happens. The other thing I'll share is that usually at Ziva, what we do is mindfulness into meditation, into manifesting. So it's like the 3 M's that make up the Ziva technique. Today, I'm going to do something different. It's going to be very specialized to where we are collectively. I'm going to give people a moment to actually feel what they're feeling, because a lot of us are being like, I'm fine. There's a pandemic happening, but I'm fine. And we haven't actually taken a moment to process how we're feeling. So I'd like to just give us a moment. And paradoxically, if we just purge that, then we feel much better on the other side. And then at the end, we'll share what you and I did in Greece together, which is just pulling the lens of our awareness way out. Okay, so big thing to remember, thoughts are not the enemy. We'll take it as it comes. You don't have to have fancy fingers. This is all about relaxation, ease, and innocence. So I'd invite you to have a seat, ideally with your back supported and your head free, just anywhere that you're comfortable. Turn off any other windows, bells, and whistles so you can give yourself a moment to surrender. And we're going to start with something called 2x breath. And we're simply going to inhale through the nose for 2 and exhale through the mouth for 4. And what we're doing here is we're doubling the length of our exhale from our inhale. And that's where the magic happens in this, is doubling the exhale to the inhale. This helps to strengthen and soften the vagus nerve, which is the superhighway between the brain and body. So let's all do it together. Let's inhale through the nose for 2 and exhale through your mouth for 4. Really good. Inhaling through the nose for 2. Exhaling through the mouth for 4. We'll do a few more like this. In through the nose for 2, breathing right into the belly. Exhaling through your mouth for 4. You can go ahead and close your eyes if you haven't already. Inhaling through the nose for 2, breathing right into the belly. And as you exhale through your mouth for the count of 4, you can start to feel the muscles softening and surrendering. So inhaling through the nose for the count of 2, letting the belly rise, the chest rise. And as you exhale, imagining your brow softening, your jaw softening, your shoulders dropping, and your heart opening. Really good. You can start to elongate this if you like. So you can inhale for 4 and exhale for 8. And on this exhale, again, letting the brow soften, all of the muscles around the eyes relax, the lips part, the shoulders drop even further, and the heart opens as you exhale. Inhaling through the nose for 4. And as we exhale, letting the belly relax, letting your hips widen, letting the muscles in your legs go loose. Again, inhaling for 4. And as we exhale, letting any remaining tension just drain from the top of your head all the way down through the legs, the calves, the feet. And imagine any anxiety, any stress, any holding just washing down through the bottoms of your feet. Really good. And on this next inhale, breathing into the very top of your head. And as you exhale, just imagining any holding, any tension, any speculation, any anxiety just washing from the top of your head. And as you exhale, imagine it washing down through every single part of your body and just washing down through the bottoms of your feet, letting go of anything that is not serving you or your body. Really good. And now you can let your breath be easy and natural. There's no need to manipulate the breath anymore. Just letting your breath be innocent. Letting it be normal. And we're going to take a few moments and I'm going to give you a phrase that you can think in the background of your mind. And we're going to use it almost like an anchor. We're going to remember that thoughts are not the enemy. But for right now, I invite you to place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And before we move into a bit of silent practice, I want you to just take this one hand on your heart and this one hand on your belly and check in with your body. And just ask yourself the simple question, how am I feeling? Really, truly, no BS, honestly, how am I feeling right now? Not how do I think I should feel, not how do I want to post on Facebook, but how am I feeling, honestly, right here, right now? How's my heart? And if you feel good, you're allowed to feel good. You don't have to feel guilty about that. If you're scared, you are allowed to be scared. If you're sad, please give yourself permission to be sad. Many of us spend so much time pretending that we're not feeling our feelings or trying to control our emotions in one way or the other. For right now, just let them flow. Let them talk to you. Let your body say whatever it needs to say. You can imagine that your hands are receptors. Really listening to the body. Taking comfort in the fact that emotion is simply energy in motion, emotion, energy in motion. Letting these feelings move. Surrendering to whatever's happening for you right now. How am I feeling? And when you feel like you've listened to anything that your body is saying to you, when you feel complete on that, you can drop your hands into your lap, but keep your eyes closed. And we're going to take a few minutes of silence together, but I'm going to give you a phrase that you can think very innocently, very gently, very softly in the background of your mind. And it's simply let go. Let go. Let go. Let go. Letting this get fainter and finer. Noting if the phrase slips away, that's okay. We don't have to focus or concentrate. We do not have to clear the mind. You're allowed to have thoughts. And when you notice that you're on a mental field trip, it's all good. You can come back to this beautiful, gentle phrase like an anchor. Let go. Let go. Giving yourself and your body permission to surrender, to trust, to heal. And if your mind is racing, you can let it race, taking comfort in this anchoring phrase. And if you feel like you're falling into a sleepy feeling, that's fine. You can fall into that sleepy feeling. Let's keep the eyes closed. But we can let go of this phrase inside, like we're cutting the cord to this beautiful anchor. And from this space of groundedness, of connection, I invite you to think of 3 things that you're grateful for right now. It does not matter how big or how small they are. It could be gratitude for the technology that's allowing us to connect. It could be gratitude for the fact that you have air to breathe, or food to eat, or people who love you. Just saying thank you, thank you, thank you. And from this space of groundedness and gratitude, we're going to end with the exercise that Eric and I did in Greece, in Mykonos. So I invite you to think of a person who you love, a person who makes you feel just wonderful. And imagine them sitting 3 feet in front of you. Just looking into their eyes and noticing how that changes your feeling. Just imagining this person who you love so much, who loves you so much, it makes you feel wonderful. And imagine sitting across from each other, looking into each other's eyes. And I invite you to tell this person, I love you. And it might feel vulnerable or brave or fun, but just saying it in your mind, imagining sharing with this person how much you love them. Just say, I love you. And now imagine them saying it back to you, looking you right in your eyes, staring right into your soul, and them saying back to you, I love you. And as you inhale, receiving their love, letting their beautiful gift start to saturate every single cell in your body, to where every cell in your body starts to vibrate with the very frequency of love. And as you exhale, I invite you to send that energy out to your entire home, filling your home with this beautiful healing energy of love. And as you inhale, allowing this to come back to you, letting this beautiful healing energy of love start to permeate every cell in your body, starting to vibrate every single cell in your body with this healing energy of love. And as you exhale, can you imagine sending this love out to your entire country, To all your friends, all your enemies, your coworkers, your family, every single person in your whole country, just blasting them with this frequency of love. And knowing that as you send it out, it's simultaneously coming back to you. So opening up your heart, allowing yourself to receive this healing energy of love, letting this vibrate every single cell in your body. And as you exhale, imagine sending it out to the entire planet Earth. All the people, all the animals, the planet itself, just imagine blasting the planet Earth with this beautiful, healing, uniting frequency of love. You could imagine this as a light coming out from your heart or a ripple on a wave circumnavigating the globe. Whatever works for you, just imagine blasting the planet with love. Opening up your heart and receiving that boomerang effect back into your body, letting it strengthen this frequency as this beautiful healing energy courses from the top of your head to the bottoms of your feet. Letting every cell in your body start to vibrate with this beautiful healing energy. And as you exhale, imagine sending it out to the entire universe. So beyond the solar system, beyond the galaxy, beyond the clusters of galaxies, and out into the entirety of all that is. As far as your imagination can conceive, just imagine sending love out to the entire universe. Universe, one song. There really is only one thing, and we are all it. So as we send love out to the universe, know that it is simultaneously coming back to us. Imagining yourself like one wave on this giant ocean of consciousness. Imagine yourself as one wave on this giant ocean of energy. Reminding yourself that you are the universe is you. And as you exchange this reciprocity of love, as you send it out to the universe, it is simultaneously coming back to you. So allow that frequency to heal and strengthen your entire body, to make you more resilient. Allow that force to strengthen your immune system, to strengthen your lungs, to strengthen your resilience. And from this space of expanded awareness, of resilience, I invite you to imagine one dream you have for the earth. One dream you have for humanity, one thing that you would love to see come to fruition. And imagining that dream as if it's happening right now. The collective awakening, the planetary healing, the personal goal. It does not matter how big or how small. We're just spending as much time on our dreams as we are our speculation. So imagining this dream as if it is your current reality, letting it bring even a smile to your face. And taking a big, cleansing, energizing inhale. And as you exhale, letting go of anything that is not serving you or this dream. Again, a beautiful, cleansing, energizing inhale, bringing your awareness into your room, into your body, starting to move your hands, your feet. And as you exhale, letting go of anything that is not serving you or this dream. Really good. And in your own time, whenever you're ready, we can start to slowly, gently open the eyes. High five, friends. We did it. We blasted the planet with some much needed love, and hopefully you got a little love booster yourself. So the things to take away from that are one, the 2x breath that we started with. It's super simple, but very powerful. You just inhale for 2 and exhale for 4. And so if you do find yourself unable to tear yourself away from the news, or you're just in a speculation spiral, just in for 2, out for 4. It's not complicated, and that's by design. If you're about to have a panic attack or an anxiety attack, or if you're in ICU or in ER, we don't have time for complicated stuff. It's just in for 2, out for 4. And it is simple, but very powerful. The other thing is to know that thoughts are not the enemy. If you're having thoughts during meditation, that's fine. You just come back to whatever technique you're using. And then the piece at the end, I call it the love bomb, where you're basically just blasting the whole planet with love. That's always a fun thing to do. And then at the end, it's the manifesting piece. And people find this a bit challenging. And I think the only reason that people find the manifesting challenging is that we're so practiced. We've become so good at the speculation part. We are so good at spending so much time and energy worrying about the worst case scenario that to shift that into imagining the best case scenario feels a little foreign to start. But know that that is a muscle like any other. And as we start to practice it, it gets easier and easier and easier. And, why not? Which wolf do we want to feed? If we're feeding this speculation and worry wolf 90% of the day, can we at least spend 10% of our time on our imagination and the world that we want to create?
Emily, that was really, really fantastic. It was excellent. And I didn't even hate the first minute. So that's,
Great.
There's two thoughts that came to me as you were just talking about that. You made this, you were talking about when people are doing like the serious deep sea, like long underwater periods. It's funny, I never really pieced it together, but years ago I lived in Turks and Caicos and a friend of mine took me out. He said, "Do you want to go free diving?" And I'd never been free diving. I snorkeled, but I said, "What's the difference?" And he goes, "Well, the depth and the fins." And so he gave me these super long fins and then he put weights on me. And like every other place puts a life jacket on you when you go snorkeling, but no, he's putting weights on me. I'm like, "We're going swimming with weights? Like, what is this?" And he goes, "Yeah, we're gonna go down to the bottom. We're gonna go and dive." And so I prepared my breath and what have you, and I dove down to the bottom. And he took this all on GoPro. So I got all the footage of this, but I dove down to the bottom because I thought that's what we were supposed to do. And then I went to the edge of the lip of the bottom and looked down over the abyss because Turks and Caicos is like the top of Mount Everest underwater. And so you look down over the abyss. And when I came up to the top, he was freaking out. He's like, what the hell are you doing? Like you've said, I was under for 2 minutes and I went to 100 feet of depth, my first ever free dive. And I would suggest that has a lot to do with the fact that I was already meditating, that I was already able to make those changes internally. And it's the reason I mention that to you is the feeling that I get when I'm at 100 feet or 90 feet of water is one of the most deeply meditative feelings I can have. And I just had some of that now. I just had some of that feeling sitting here at my desk. So thank you so much for giving us that gift. It's really special.
My pleasure. Yeah, I learned to scuba dive a few years ago because my husband used to be a scuba instructor. And for me, it was very like I'd say probably the closest I've ever come to a panic attack was my first time underwater scuba diving because my brain was like, "You should be dead. You should be dead. You should be dead. You're underwater." And I was like, I gotta go. I want to go. And then thankfully I had this beautiful teacher and he just held me and he just looked right in my eyes and he was like, he was just like reminding me to breathe. And in that technique, the breath was the tool. And in a lot of meditation practices, the breath is the tool. At Ziva, we use different tools, but either way, regardless of what tool you're using, it's like, just come back to the tool. And then I loved it. Like once I got past that initial panic, once I was in the deep blue, I also was quite good at it. Like I could stay out for longer than anyone because I could drop my metabolic rate. And it felt like the most visceral, physical metaphor for meditation because at the top it's all choppy and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die and everything feels overwhelming. But then once you de-excite, once you drop down into yourself, there's just this beautiful connection and expansiveness. And I was just like, oh, this is physical meditation. And I hate it when people say like exercise is my meditation or cooking is my meditation because I'm like, no, it's not. It's called cooking. But I actually think that scuba diving is the closest analogy to meditation that there is.
Yeah. I want to give everybody a little bit of a little stress hack here. It's just an anchor hack. It works like this. The first thing is that your unconscious mind really doesn't understand the difference between the projections you create internally and what you see in the outside world. And that's why you can go and watch, my favorite example of this is there's this movie years ago called The Abyss. And in this movie, a woman was in a room and the water was coming up like this and it was going to drown her. And I was watching this movie in a theater, and as the water was coming up like this and she's like going up, and I realized I was sitting in the movie theater like that. I was in a movie theater and then I looked around and everybody else around me was sitting like that. And so if a movie can project onto us and affect us so profoundly when it's not even happening, it happened months ago on us in a set and with actors and safety. Well, we can be fooled into being afraid when we don't need to be. And one of the things the media is doing right now is fooling you. What I mean by this is that, yes, there's clearly things we should be aware of, but I want to put this into perspective here, is that the level of danger that we suffer really from coronavirus on an individual basis, as long as we don't have pre-existing health conditions, is like substantially less than the normal day-to-day life of driving. We lose 3,000 people a day in car accidents around the world, and we only are getting to those numbers in coronavirus now. What I'm trying to say is the news media is trying to trick you into being afraid, because the more afraid you are, the more you will go to the news media. So here's my little travel hack for you. My little, well, not a travel hack, it's more of a stress hack, is every single time you see the CNN logo or the Fox logo or the MSNBC logo or any of those logos, if you even see the logo, like you didn't even go to the website, somebody shared it in their social, first unfriend them. But then the minute you see the logo, I want you to do this. Really do what Emily just showed you. Take a breath in for 2 and a breath out for 4, and do that 3 or 4 or 5 times. The minute you see the logo, you just go, oh, look, there's that stupid Fox logo. And condition yourself. And my goal, let's get to the point where when we see the CNN and Fox logo, it calms us down, because we don't bother reading all the other crap, because they're going to keep putting their logo in front of us. And so now, if they can trick us into adrenaline, why don't we just trick ourselves back into dopamine? That's my general goal for you. Emily, how can our people here and the people that watch this on YouTube, once we publish it, how can they get a hold of you? I know you, for example, right now you're offering your programs for free to the frontline people. How do people find you?
Yeah, so the easiest place is just zivameditation.com. So Z-I-V-A, it's a Sanskrit word that means bliss, but it's zivameditation.com. And then the online course that we're offering free to frontline workers is zivameditation.com/online, which I'll just pop in the chat right now. And then everyone else, it's free for doctors, nurses, EMTs, people who are really putting their lives and their families' lives, they're at risk. And I agree with you. The rest of us, if you don't have pre-existing conditions, if you're not working with sick people all day, the risk is different for us. But we wanted to really support people. We wanted to give them tools to be more resilient. We wanted to strengthen their immune systems, because that's good for all of us. And it's 50% off for everyone else. So it's just zivameditation.com/online. And we're doing a lot of stuff on social, just like everyone, I'm just trying to be of service as much as I can. We're doing weekly global mass meditations every Saturday at 3:30 in our Facebook group. That's called the Ziva Tribe. But I'll send you all these links so we can post them.
Emily, for the years that we've known each other, which must be 3 or so, 4, we've
more
had
than that, or 5.
4
we met in
4.
We met in 2016.
There
so
it
we're
is.
4 years in.
And, we've had a number of fun conversations and been to cool parties and amazing costumes and all that kind of stuff. But this is the first time we've really had an opportunity to sit down and have a chat. And on a personal basis, I'm glad I got to have that. And I'm even doubly grateful that we got to have eavesdroppers, that we got to share this conversation with our audience around the world. I really, really appreciate you making the time and being here for everybody. Thank you so very much.
Well, the feeling is very mutual. I've always respected you from afar, and yet while I've considered us friends for a long time, you're right, this is our first real drop in, and even our first time doing anything professionally together. And so I feel it's been really fun, and I know that it's just going to be the beginning of lots of magic. So thank you.